Barry Tompkins along with Rich Marotta and Sean O'Grady. And Rich, you have to wonder right now, what comes next as we look forward to our main event?
Well, yeah, that should be an eye-opener for every fighter. Of course, we've seen already this year with the way that Rahman took out Lennox Lewis that anything's possible when these heavyweights get into the ring. And we saw it there with Ray Sefo and Chester Hughes, that anything can happen. That certainly was something we did not suspect was going to happen tonight. But it's a lesson to be learned by all heavyweights. So guys that big that can punch, man, anything can happen. Oquendo and Obed Sullivan might keep that in mind too.
Well, exactly. Now you look ahead to the main event, and you look at a guy like Obed Sullivan, and you say, well, he's been there. He's 33 years old. He's been around the track. He's been on again, off again. But from everything we understand, for tonight's fight, he's giving himself the best chance to win.
Well, that's the important thing. Obed Sullivan really wants to win this fight tonight. So does Oquendo. What you have here is a situation, it's a little bit unusual. Yes, you have a youth versus experience, but what we have here tonight is a young, hungry fighter against an old, hungry fighter.
He is at long last focused and serious-minded. For Obed, Sullivan knows it's now or never in his boxing career. In his earlier days, Sullivan found himself often in the ring with the best around, such as current heavyweight champion Hasim Rahman, against whom he often gave as good as he got. Sullivan acquitted himself well, took the Rock the distance, winning several rounds along the way, but not quite enough to take the decision, something that still irks him today.
When I lost that fight, majority draw or something, a majority decision, it was a decision, like a split decision. It wasn't even unanimous. Neither one of us did anything great. But after I lost that fight, I sort of got I was like a kid. I took my bite and my ball and went home. So I really wasn't interested in boxing too much after that.
There was only mixed success after that and one disastrous first-round loss to David Tua. But this fight against Sherman Tank Williams, which followed a good draw with Larry Donald, gave Sullivan the showcase he needed, an exciting performance in the NABF title, to put him on a collision course with tonight's opponent, young Oquendo.
How do I feel about fighting Oquendo? Hey, he's a young guy coming up. He's trying to make a big name for himself. He made a really good name for himself when he beat at 10. He was an underdog. Nobody expected him to win that fight. And he did it, but he'll be coming from our belt. I'm not giving it to him.
But Oquendo is looking to take it from Sullivan. This undefeated heavyweight, born in Puerto Rico, raised in Chicago, has suddenly captured a lot of attention with a series of growingly impressive victories. This win over Dale Crow showed Oquendo had the heart to get off the canvas, to come from behind and win. Against the Cuban defensive specialist Ramon Garbe, many thought Oquendo would be hard-pressed to even land a clean shot. But when he did, Garbe felt it, and Oquendo landed hard and often to win again. Against Willie Chapman, Oquendo sat down in his punches and showed power he was not supposed to have. His continued development under trainer Felix Trinidad Sr. was beginning to show.
Since I hooked up with Trinidad 3.5 years ago, I feel a lot better mentally, physically, confidence, emotion. I just developed into a package fighter.
Then came the shocker against Cliff Etienne. 3 first-round knockdowns were but a preview of what was ahead, as Oquendo, a huge underdog, landed right hand after right hand, scored knockdown after knockdown of a supposedly budding superstar. 7 knockdowns until it was finally stopped.
He was considered the next Joe Frazier by many top trainers in boxing today, and for me to annihilate him the way I did in March of this year, it was just a wonderful moment for me, my family, and for boxing.
And bigger and more wonderful moments are what Oquendo dreams of now.
And so he does have dreams, Barry, big dreams right now, and they could actually be, hello.
Yeah, it's a little guest shot here.
And they could be realized for him. You're talking about things that are of major importance in the career of Oquendo. He could possibly, for example, just imagine, fight John Ruiz, for the WBA Heavyweight Championship. Could you imagine that? Puerto Rican against Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico? I mean, would they have trouble selling out a stadium there for that? I don't think so. It would be fantastic. But in boxing, remember, you're only as good, or at least they only talk about what you've done lately. After tonight, they won't be talking about the Clifford Etienne fight. They'll be talking about what Fres Oquendo does in this ring behind us tonight against Obed Sullivan.
Yeah, and there's really a lot at stake in this fight. And oftentimes you talk about an NABF championship and you say, what does it really mean? And quite frankly, oftentimes it doesn't really mean too much. In this case, it means a whole lot because this is a credibility fight. The holder of the NABF championship here off the Silver Star Casino. We are in Choctaw, Mississippi. Used to be Philadelphia, Mississippi, but now this is actually a city of its own, Choctaw. Fres Oquendo and Obed Sullivan. 12 rounds for the NABF Heavyweight Championship. And Rich, as we were saying earlier, all of a sudden, this championship, while it's a belt and a stepping stone, does take on a certain degree of importance.
Well, yeah, first of all, to the sanctioning organization, because they consider their North American champion, or in the other case, a USBA champion, they consider them kind of an ex officio member of the top 10, whether they're actually ranked in the top 10 or not. I think in their minds it still qualifies a guy to fight for the championship. To have that belt, it gives them something to fight in here for tonight, and the winner of this fight is going to jump in the rankings again. Now, if you look at Oquendo, he's already jumped to 7th, but Sullivan, he's outside the top 10, but not much. Sullivan, who holds that NABF title, he could be in the top 10, Barry, with a victory here this evening. So this is very important. He's ranked 11th and 12th in a couple of the different sanctioning organizations.
You know, I think it's interesting, too. Every time we talk about Fres Oquendo, we talk about this being a real test for him. I feel like we've been saying that for his entire career, and yet I feel as though it's worthy of saying again tonight, because in Obed Sullivan, he gets a guy who's not only been there before, but he is really absolutely fit and ready for this fight tonight.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about it is that Fres Oquendo finally has gotten to the point where he's not an underdog here tonight. He was an underdog against Duncan Dakawari and beat him. He was no better than an even money match against Phil Jackson and beat him. He was a huge underdog to Clifford Etienne and just destroyed him with 7 knockdowns during the course of the fight. Now, how does Fres Oquendo act? What is his mental state of mind as a favorite coming in here tonight? That might be a question to be answered.
Yeah, now he's an overdog. I mean, that in itself is a first for him. Fres Oquendo is a guy who comes in here absolutely fit, and one thing to keep in mind, when Obed Sullivan had that draw with Larry Donald, he was knocked down in the final round, or he would have won that fight.
That's right. That's
so
exactly
conditioning
right.
is going to be a big factor here.
Right, that was important for Obed. He was going to win that fight with Larry Donald. He's ahead by 2 points on the cards going into the final round, and by getting knocked down, he loses a 2-point round, he loses the lead, and it ends up a draw. But Obed's been fighting well lately. That draw with Donald, that victory over Sherman Tank Williams, I think that showed that he, could hang in there for good 12 hard rounds, and he's really dedicated. I think Obed, you have to have a little motivation, Barry, and I think he feels that, yeah, I'm back here, I can make another statement on television. If I can win this fight tonight, hey, maybe I got a shot at really making some money.
Yeah, I think so too. He's been in the gym for 90 days, and he's a guy who sort of trained on again, off again,
Right.
but not this time. People tell us he's been there every day, he's been there every day on time, and he really feels that maybe for him this is the last hurrah.
Yeah, and let me tell you, earlier tonight I rode up in the elevator with Obed, and he was a man of very few words. He was already looking intense about, a few hours ago, and he said, I'm really getting ready to do my thing in there tonight.
Now, that said, Fres Oquendo is a guy who has spent an awful lot of time in the gym. Fres Oquendo was an athlete. He's not just a boxer. Right. He was a football player in high school. He moved, incidentally, from Chicago down to Puerto Rico to be with Felix Trinidad Sr., and he is with Felix Trinidad Jr. almost as much as he is with Felix Trinidad Sr. He runs with him, he works out with him, and that sets a pretty good tone for him.
Well, he is with him every day. He trains with him, most all day long. They're a real team down there, and I don't think we can underestimate the value of Papa Trinidad to the career of Fres Oquendo. I think Felix Trinidad Sr. has certainly proven he knows how to train fighters, and he has done a great job with Fres Oquendo, who has turned into a real professional.
Yeah, and how often, of course, would Felix Trinidad Sr. come north from Puerto Rico with any other fighter when his fighter, his son, Felix Trinidad, has maybe his biggest fight of his life coming up in just a couple of weeks. So that's how serious they're taking this fight.
That's right. He flew here today from Puerto Rico. He's flying back tomorrow. But hey, he feels that Fres is very important, and he's the manager and the trainer of Fres Oquendo, and he wants to be here for Fres Oquendo tonight.
And you can see that it's Norma's birthday tonight as well.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
And I'm sure so is Norma. Frez Oquendo, incidentally, you know, he has changed so much since we first saw him. I think he's really gotten himself into boxing shape. I mean, physically, he even looks different than when we first saw him.
Well, yeah, you know, I think the whole way, too. He's so confident. I've never seen Frez as confident as he is now, but that's as a result of obviously, of the Clifford Etienne fight. And, I mean, he really goes into the ring now thinking like a prize fighter. He looks like a prize fighter. And, you know, you have to admit, look, the guy was a football player in high school. And I think at the beginning of his pro career, Barry, he was probably wondering, am I a football player or am I really a boxer?
And so is the boxing world. And as we said, every time there has been a question about him, he has come up with the answer. And he feels once again that he can do it tonight. He doesn't think that this is the ultimate question. He just kind of considers this the latest question. He has done everything asked of him so far. And again tonight, it doesn't get any easier.
No, not against an in shape and focused and very intense Obed Sullivan. But Frez is a very confident guy. He has a perfect record, 20-0, 11 knockouts. He does have a decent amateur background, as you can see, but it's not a spectacular amateur background with a zillion international fights or anything like that. He's done a lot of learning on the job and become a good professional prize fighter.
And remember, tonight he is the challenger. Here is the champion, Obed Sullivan. And Sullivan, as you can see, has already worked up a pretty good sweat, and that's something that any fighter will tell you, you better do. You got to be ready from the opening bell.
I'm sure that